Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Clone Zone. It's our Ted Lasso after show that we do every. Oh, sorry, no, this is Bad Batch. My bad. We're talking about episode 13, Infested, and today our guest is Alden Diaz from Ahch-To Radio. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
What's going on, everybody? This is about that other show that came out today. The much smaller franchise.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah, we're trying to help
Yeah,
get Star Wars off the ground, and
that's what it is. I mean, Jason Sudeikis, he punched Grogu one time. You might remember
that's
that.
true.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know what? I actually did forget about that. Now
So there is that connection. There is that.
Did that ruin Ted Lasso for you, Molly?
No, but now I don't know how to feel.
But now you've given Molly a crisis of self. But
he could be one of those people that goes to a celebration and gets a whole line of people for something else, which I always think is super entertaining. Like kind of like you with Scrubs and stuff, or like when Sarah Michelle Gellar, I think she showed up at like 2017 or something like that. I forget. But yeah, he could be there and say like, I punched Grogu, and it'll just everybody celebrating Ted Lasso.
That's true. It does seem that every time we go to celebration, let's see, I got Garrick Hagon, but then we went and waited in line because I didn't have to wait in line for Garrick Hagon, Biggs. Then we went and did Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. because Molly loves Buffy. I love Buffy too. Then last year or 2 years ago, God, I went and saw Donald Faison for Scrubs. So we'll have to see what non-Star Wars personality that's like kind of related to Star Wars we go to see next year.
Yeah, I've always wanted to really, especially with all the shows that are ramping up and the people that you get involved, like Stellan Skarsgård's going to be in Andor. So it's like I want to bring him like a picture from Good Will Hunting. Just be like, I loved you in Good Will Hunting, and just see if he'll sign it. Like,
you got a lot of people asking who Ted Lasso is. Amazing show. Just came back out for season 2. Just Google Ted Lasso, get the Apple TV trial and watch it. You're welcome. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen. I love it to death. Yeah. We got some Greyhound fans here. But I'm sorry, immediately off the rails. So we want to talk about the Bad Batch, episode 13, Infested. And right before we went live, I asked Alden what he thought about it, and he started talking, and I was like, what am I doing? And we should go live and do this. So Alden, what did you think of today's episode?
Well, this is a completely original. I didn't start just a few minutes ago off air. I will say I'm having less of a problem with some of the stuff that's been going on than I think a lot of people, at least in our space. There's been a lot of rightful conversation, I think, similar to Mando season 2 of, is this still about the characters that it was sold to be on? The Mandalorian being Din, and then it becomes sort of like a Filoni, this is your life, let's check in on some of the creations along the way, which is fair. I love that season. So the way that I've sort of been approaching this is not dissimilar to like Star Wars Resistance, where it was called Star Wars Resistance, but it wasn't actually about the actual military organization, the Resistance.
Yeah.
And I think that the animation has a trend going on where the Clone Wars was also a lot about Force lore and mythology. Rebels wasn't even about the rebellion. It was before a formal rebellion. It was about this family. I think, and I've talked about this with, our friend Ken Knapsack, like that the Bad Batch is everyone that doesn't fit right now during this transitionary time. So your Bad Batch is also your Sid. It's also your Roland, who I really enjoyed this episode. Your Bad Batch is Moochie, somebody getting captured and taken away. So I've liked all the standalones, even though I do agree with the people that are saying, Tech hasn't had an arc. That's true. Echo hasn't really had an arc. That's also true. It's really been the Hunter show, the Omega show, and then like a dash of Wrecker. Right. But I'm ultimately okay with it.
I have been too. Like I've been having a ton of fun with it every week. We finished this episode and we were kind of just like, well, all right. Like this episode just didn't do it for me. I saw a lot of people though, like all of a sudden really, I don't know, turning on the series as a whole, which I was like, that's a little extreme. In my mind, it's like 12 really good episodes. And then like one, this feels like the one where I was just like, I don't know that we had to have this one, but looking back at other Star Wars animated series, I think it's probably going to be relevant down the line. It's just that we're not far enough away from it to see the full picture yet.
Yeah. I liked this. I liked parts of this episode. I agree it's one of the weaker ones. I had this idea in my head that like the last four were going to be just like jam-packed, full of action. I mean, this had a lot of action, but yeah, we're just not getting the stories close to home for the Bad Batch themselves right now, or not in this episode. And I miss that because we've kind of been spoiled with these little snacks that they've given us of really good moments between Omega and the clones, and the clones having their own kind of arcs. I really hope they dig deep into that if there's another season. But
For sure.
I did like that it was kind of different seeing Sid be the one that was kind of needing help,
Right.
And kind of in trouble. And then she had a nice moment where she was talking to Hunter about like, oh, we don't want to mess with the Pikes. Like, that's not normally something that we would see from Sid. So it was nice getting a different side of her.
I also think that maybe that's what the series was doing. I'm trying to think on like a more galactic scale. You know, we've been seeing how the Empire treats a separatist planet, how they treat Ryloth. I was like, what is this one doing? And it's giving us a bit more of a peek into the underworld, but it doesn't feel all that different. Like, it's just, you know, Roland is coming in and trying to scramble for power on his own, but he's also got the Pikes behind him and they're messing with him. So it just feels like this very backstabby, everyone is scrambling to get more and more power during the chaos of the Empire coming up. But that just seems like par for the course, I guess.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
there's
trying
like
to find more meaning there.
I did
I
have
think
one more
there's-
thing to add real
Okay.
quick. It's Reefton's birthday.
Happy birthday, Refund.
Happy
I
birthday,
love that
Reefton.
that's so
totally
readily
me.
accessible.
Any occasion, it's great.
That's fantastic. If
Happy
you get that
birthday,
rhythm
buddy.
just right. I think that sort of what we're seeing is an interesting situation where like the sum of all these parts tells a better story than almost the individual things. Like, and it's not dissimilar to, you know, the best example everyone goes to is like the Purgle in Star Wars Rebels,
Right.
where it's like, okay, that's like a minor bit of world building. Space whales, exactly.
Yep.
That's a very minor bit of world building in that episode. Oh, maybe there were creatures that, you know, could harness hyperspace before we did. Okay, cool. We're moving on with the A plot now. And then they become essential. So that could be Roland. That could be some sort of relationship with the Pikes. But throughout all of this, what we're seeing is, in my eyes, is a sort of a Bad Batch taking a tour through the way everybody has reacted. So you have your Cham, your Hera, Eleni, and Gobi. And then you have your, you know, Bib Fortuna with Muchi and Sid and Roland, where you're seeing how every possible walk of life has had to adapt and change. And then you have these guys who don't have personalities, are essentially, you know, these men that have only ever had one purpose. And the Bad Batch are unlike other clones, not just because of their mutations, but because they have 100% mission success rate by the end of the Clone Wars. They've never lost. They've never been challenged. They've never had anything happen to them until Crosshair turned. And so now that's why I think it's so refreshing to have Omega, you know, constantly being like, well, that's why, you know, that's why we should help them, because they're in need. Like, I don't really have a reason. I just feel like it's right. That type of non-mission objective stuff that they don't really understand as people. And I get, again, the criticism of, well, we've seen Omega have this talk with Hunter before. We've seen like how many times until Hunter learns that it's just the right thing. But, you know, these are fundamentally broken people. I mean, I'm sure we'll see similar themes in the Kenobi show for him as a person. Just it'll be on an adult level because it'll be live action. It'll be, you know, an Oscar-worthy actor. So it's going to be, it's also about the audience too.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to point out.
Sorry,
I
I was
just
going to
wanted to
say,
highlight one comment real quick because I was totally guilty of that. Like, I didn't really like the first Ryloth episode, and then the very next episode made me appreciate it that much more. And like now I'm like, Ryloth arc is top tier, Bad Batch. Like, I love both of them. So a lot of that is just kind of like have some patience and wait for it to all play out.
Yeah. I do really enjoy that Omega seems to see how like people that animals like are probably okay people. It's kind of like if you date a guy who doesn't like cats or dogs, that's like a big red flag. But he's got Ruby, and she was like, well, Ruby likes him, so he's probably okay.
Well, your cat Guinness did not like me when we first met, so
She
thanks
did
for giving me a shot.
a little bit.
Did that turn around at any point?
Whenever I wasn't
Sometimes.
around.
Yeah, I was like way down the totem pole of people that she would want to hang out with. She would settle for me.
But that's how a lot of beautiful relationships, you know, like we've seen that even here in the show, how they had to settle for Sid, and now they kind of like her. I think that deep down, Hunter wants to crack a smile whenever she's like, "Hey, tall, dark, and handsome. Hey, hey, muscles. Hey, goggles." Like it always makes me smile.
Yeah.
Sid is someone who it's like, I mean, I enjoy her as a character, but I would not want to hang out with her. And so I'm like, I was struggling a little bit when Omega's like, we have to help her. I was like, do you? Like, she's blackmailing you in this episode. So like, I don't want Omega to lose that just childlike, yeah, we got to help people who are in help, and that's it. But I wish Sid showed a little bit of growth, I guess.
I think that Sid, like, low key, especially in the Dejarik tournament that they were holding there. I think that, like, it wouldn't surprise me if I don't think they'll go here, and I'm not trying to like write the show for them, but like if it was like Sid revealed that Sid had like lost a kid at some point, and that's why the only person that she's nice to, like, I feel like there's something there with like even this scoundrel, which we've seen in Star Wars a lot. Like every scoundrel has a heart of gold except DJ in The Last Jedi, and that's what makes him special, is because every scoundrel in Star Wars, Vizago, Hondo, Grief Karga, like they all have at some point revealed some sort of heart of gold, which I think is sort of coming out with her. One thing about that, though, that you mentioned, we have to go help Sid. I had one of the biggest laugh moments I've had ever when they did just they show Sid like waving at them like she's already on the ship, and then they do a hard cut to these two idiots from her bar sitting there. Like they're just tag-alongs no matter what. Like, killed me. One of my favorite parts of the episode was them, Bolo and Ketch.
Yeah,
that was a big laugh for me too.
I like that they had a lot to do in this episode, and they're like helping her out. Like, they're very loyal.
Which I'm like, were maybe they were friends beforehand, because I think the implication is that they were the same people that Ahsoka and the Martez sisters let out on Obadiah. And then they made their way to Sid's, and now they're still like working against the Pikes. Like, no wonder they were thrown in prison. They've probably done something like this before.
Yeah, I loved because again, you have it's funny enough to see them there, like, oh, these guys have nothing better to do than to live in this bar. But then it's like, and I tweeted it out today, they are the Badger and Skinny Pete of Star Wars for people that watch Breaking Bad. Like, there's like these two scumbags, but they're kind of funny, and you really like them, and they can survive even in a really high power game. Yeah.
And this is a good point that Sid definitely cares about Omega. I full on agree with that, but I don't know that this is. I hope it is an empty threat, but I still just don't quite trust her.
Well, she said that before about like keeping secrets. She said that like in the first episode that she showed up, and I was like, uh-oh. But I kept on waiting for her to do something to make me think that she might betray them, but I don't think that's going to happen after this episode.
It makes me wonder what would happen if this character was similar to Lando and Empire, you know, like if your back's up against the wall, if Rampart showed up, or if an Inquisitor or somebody that was really bad news showed up and confronted Sid, would she break? Which I think is sort of like a theme of the show, is what is it going to get you to break? And we saw that with Cham and how Cham Syndulla characteristically does not ever break, with Saw Gerrera as well. But then there are people that absolutely do, and they immediately try to find their way either up the ladder or into the shadows, like Roland. Roland reminded me a lot of Kira in this episode. Not that they have similar personalities, but just that he was like, I didn't ask to be in this. My mother's in this game. I'm stuck in it anyway, and I've got to survive, and the only way is up. And if that means I have to screw you over, that's what that means.
I think that's a great point.
We're kind of seeing too, like I liked what you said about seeing people break, like what's it going to take? It's kind of the opposite for the clones that had their chips go off. It's like, what's it going to take for them to snap out of it? Yeah,
absolutely.
I totally agree with you on Roland. I did like his character quite a bit. I hadn't even put that together, that kind of Kira connection of just, he's just stuck in this. Some people are just born into it. And like, I think that's a good point, that he could be an ally down the line. And I think that he and his family are very good contenders to show up later. So I do think that when we look back at this episode, we'll be like, oh yeah, it's the first Roland episode, and Omega was the one to see that there's more to him than just a bad guy. He's just stuck in a crappy situation.
And it's something that outside of Rada the Hutt, I don't think we've seen of somebody that, I mean, yes, you have Jabba and Zero and Mama that are that older generation in crime families, but we haven't had a speaking child of crime that I can really think of that had like a real character, where, Star Wars is always going back to things like samurais and Westerns, but also in terms of like The Godfather, like a lot of those movies is just, this is what we're stuck in. Like, we didn't ask to do this, but it's the family to see somebody that was not that bad a guy. I mean, like Deveronians that really aren't that bad. Roland, Vizago, like I kind of like this trend because there's such a sinister, immediately evil coded species that to see them sort of be kind-hearted. I love those flips. Like, I like that Bolo is an Ithorian that's kind of a moron, because I associate Ithorian being so regal, like Doc Ondar. But yeah, surprises you.
It's true.
Man, I went back and forth the whole time over whether or not, like, so I saw the episode thumbnail and I was like, oh, is that Vizago? And they're like, oh, no, his name is Roland. Okay. And then they cut his horn off. I was like, is it Vizago? Like, what are they?
I was like, like, what? Like the Dark Knight Rises. Like, Vizago's my middle name. Oh, you should go by that. It's nice.
Maybe that's just like a common thing that happens to Deveronians who cross paths with people and make enemies. They get their horns cut off.
Like a dishonor on you, dishonor on your horns.
I wonder, I asked you this. I was like, do they grow back?
I don't think they do.
I don't think so. Not that I know of. I mean, there's that great moment in War of the Bounty Hunters recently where Boss's legs come off and he's like, they'll grow back. It's like, imagine being able to throw that in your enemy's face. Like, you can't actually hurt me.
Yeah.
I do. I appreciate that, like, Daniel S. earlier said that, I mean, this is a great point, and Daniel S. said earlier, this was like in his top 5. And I'm like, great. It's funny when I walk away from a movie or an episode or whatever, and I'm like, that kind of underwhelmed me. That's when I spend way more time online reading other people's like takes and trying to find people who really, really liked it. Cause I'm like,
for sure.
I want to know that there's something that I'm just missing.
I mean, there's I've been talking like a lot about Star Wars and music today. I don't know why, but it's just felt right. Like, there's an offbeat type thing. And I think of like the Heiress in Mandalorian season 2 and how it's set up. Go find Ahsoka Tano, the forest city of Caladan and all this stuff. And it was like, whoa, that's so mythic. We're going to get into it. And then we went to the Grief Karga episode. And it was kind of like, oh, well, this has plot, but it feels a little bit like you've thrown me off the A path. So at the end of Ryloth, you get Crosshair getting the kill order on the Bad Batch, and you think you're going to go with that A story, and then it doesn't. So I feel like with the Star Wars downbeats, it's almost like, okay, this is intentionally playing around, because Star Wars movies only get to play a little. But so much of that is what we love so much. That's why there's new Lego sets of the Cantina, and that's why everybody has a favorite pod racer. It's because we all love the little downbeats. So when you expand Star Wars out to this many hours, your downbeats are going to be longer. And it goes from being a song into a concert. I just made up that metaphor. I hope it tracks.
No, like I think you are correct. Like there's so many things that people latch onto and it's something that I'm obsessed with, asking everyone, like, who's your favorite, like, non-main character? Who's someone that's in the background that no one else cares about and you think you're the biggest fan of? Like, yeah, that's deep, bro.
Thanks,
I think
bro.
you're right. And I do wonder, I think this episode probably would have been better received if it were, and by me as well, if it were like episode 5.
Yeah.
Something where they're still trying to find their place, and something that didn't take place right after Crosshair's like, I'm coming to get you. And we're like, okay, last 4 episodes, here we go.
Yeah. Well, they happened to go somewhere with a bunch of Gundarks. I want to know more about where they came from.
Yeah, that sounded interesting too.
Yeah, and I love how, you know, Star Wars always has to have the off-screen adventures. Like, you can assume that in the brief time between Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, before they show up to beat up John Leguizamo, that they have had at least a couple more adventures along the way. And I always love that implication. And like you're saying, like how you love to ask people about their favorite minor character, like somewhere out there is the world's biggest Roland fan who was created today. And Ruby, I mean, if there's not a Ruby,
I did like Ruby.
At least that species in Galaxy's Edge soon, I mean, then we're missing out, because that's immediately like Ruby and Moochie, and you know, this has been a creature fans extravaganza this entire show, really.
And I think Ruby's reappearance is another clue that it's like, this isn't just a one-off thing. Like we've already hinted about this buyer, and so now we're meeting the buyer. So this is technically like Roland's second, not appearance, but second like impact on the story, even if we didn't know it. So yeah, I think that we're not gonna just leave him.
And
I said this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it shows that he has history with Sid, and it's just not like Sid's not just going to let anybody just come in and take her bar.
Yeah,
but also that was a betrayal, probably.
Yeah, a betrayal, and it's a really good way to sell a villain. Even though Roland didn't end up being the villain, it was the Pikes. When you have somebody that's built up, you know, using visual language, like walking into the bar and not seeing her and seeing him at the desk, like that's so like instantly, even for a kid that's watching this, a kid that maybe has only seen like Resistance or, you know, just knows Baby Yoda, like they're going to watch that and say, that's not right. And then that immediately weirds you out. I mean, that's been Star Wars tradition going back to Vader saying the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am. You're like, wait, what? Like, as you? Like, that's crazy. So even though Sid's not on Vader's level, it immediately, though, tells you, oh, she's been such a thorn. This guy has to be worse, which then in turn makes this person likable. It's like how everybody couldn't stand Hondo until you started meeting people like Az Morrigan that had by default to make Hondo more likable in comparison.
Yeah, I just had a thought and it just fell right out of my head.
I saw it.
Boop. Yeah,
I saw it out there.
I was just like wondering earlier today if we have forgotten how to watch like episodic TV that's not always constantly serialized. I mean, I think shows like Lost and Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones got people into this just habit of like, yeah, what's driving the plot forward and what isn't. And or X-Files too. Like you had your Monster of the Weeks and you had your conspiracy episodes. Yeah. And I'm trying to think about like if I were to review freaking Seinfeld and be like, well, what did this do today? Like, which it's sort of which that defied like in TV, like that was right. That was part of the conceit is like, well, screw you. How about if there wasn't ever an A story? You know? And that's like, it's like Friends, you know, coined the one where they blank type formula, but Friends still had overarching plots. Seinfeld really broke that. And I think you're 100% right with TV. I mean, we all like Buffy. I was thinking just now in my head about like
what's the A plot contribution of Hush really for most of that episode?
Mhm.
But it goes down as
Yeah.
one of the most iconic episodes in genre TV because of what it was able to do. And with Ryan Johnson on Breaking Bad, he had an episode that was so
Yeah,
key
Fly.
to the plot right at the end, but then also The Fly, which ends up being just character. And TV, especially the binge model, has ruined a lot of that in recent years, which is why when Disney Plus first launched and they said we're doing Mandalorian weekly, I clapped because it forces people. I mean, could you imagine if Mandalorian season 2 was a binge watch? We would never ever get to appreciate anything except Luke Skywalker because it's freshest in your mind. I always go to Stranger Things. Love that show to death. Love those characters. I'm so excited whenever it comes out, but it's in and out. It's gone.
Yeah, you talk about it for a week.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And I mean,
I was
it's
thinking
a
about-
double-edged sword, I guess.
I was thinking about Hush though, and I feel like it does have some stuff with Tara and Willow, but that's not
true.
That's true.
for this
That's
show.
true.
And Buffy and Riley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get some development there too.
You're welcome, Jack. We're very pro Buffy here. Again, Molly went to didn't go to Celebration for Sarah Michelle Gellar, but waited in line for Sarah Michelle Gellar, not for the seventh sister.
When is she ever going to be in another nerdy convention?
Right.
She's
Exactly.
not going to him for Buffy.
Exactly.
So I had to jump on that.
You got to take advantage of your opportunities. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I think that we have sort of forgotten to trust them to tell their stories in a lot of ways. So like an episode will come out that's not driving home the A plot a lot. Like there have been quite a few episodes this season with no Crosshair. And you could make an argument like that's not emotionally resonant. And I almost agree with you, but I also think that if the story isn't finished yet, then I can't come down on them for it. Like I would almost say like, I would like to look at the season when it's done and say, okay, now that I know where you ended, you could have spent less time here with Sid or here. But it's a hard thing to do recap review discussion. I say now live on a recap review discussion.
Oh no, I said it last week in my second Ryloth episode review. I was like, yeah, it's just sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, and you're going like these shows aren't really meant to be broken down the way that we do them. Anyway, I'm about to do that for this new episode. So like,
yeah. I'm so glad we don't have to do something like this for just all of the Clone Wars. We've been doing commentaries, which is nice, but like we've compared this show to Clone Wars a bunch of times where it's just like, yeah, there's random episodes in here that have nothing to do with the arc. So.
Yeah. It's weird the way just different shows are. And even The Mandalorian like took some getting used to for me, because I was expecting like a Game of Thrones kind of like, all right, every episode's going to have like a new major development that we're all going to be talking about. It's like, nope. Sometimes he just kills some spiders.
Yep. And then that's the cool thing is that Star Wars is so retroactively poignant where it always improves itself after the fact, even your least favorite movie. Like I've said this and I've gotten heat for it every time, but my least favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One. But I will tell you that Rogue One gets better every single time that something tangentially related to it comes out. And that's how Star Wars works. And so when you get something like that episode of Mandalorian or this episode, like if down the road it's Roland that gets them out of a jam, this episode seems a lot better in comparison because we can't help but be retroactive creatures in a lot of ways. I mean, that's why the Loki show works for 6 episodes, because he is figuring out about himself what you already know about him because you've seen the journey that he hasn't seen. And, it's like I'll cite Joseph Scrimshaw, who we love. Like Obi-Wan's his favorite character. He always rightfully points out he dies in his first appearance.
Yep.
And everything else has been building over here, what many people would call fan service.
Sure. And not to mention, like, we wind up talking about these episodes so much that it's like, when you find one that's like, I was underwhelmed by that, it's like we spend a day talking about it, but then when the season is over, I'm not going to look back at these 16 episodes and be like, yeah, but that one Infested just ruined it for me. It's like, no, I'm going to think about the Ryloth arc and the stuff with Wrecker and his chip. Like, there's so many better memories to immediately jump to. It's just like, but this week we're talking about this one. But we've been in like a therapy session for half an hour. We got some super chats. Let's jump into some questions. And Donnie Iberechi, I'm so sorry for what I just did to your last name, especially. Thanks for the super chat. Tech using the word torches while referring to flashlights made me think of Steele's Schmodown answer. Did you catch that? I did not. I didn't hear him call them torches, but that's funny.
I didn't hear that either, but that tracks.
Yeah. For people who don't know, let's see. In our first Schmodown, Steele was asked the question, like, what were R2 and Yoda fighting over? And the answer was flashlight, but Steele said space torch because Australians call them torches. And at first they didn't accept it, and he had a challenge, and it was this whole big thing. But in The Last Jedi, every time Luke comes out to burn the tree down with like that actual flame, I'm like, that's a space torch right there.
Space torch.
It's an actual space torch.
I was too busy thinking about how Wrecker dropped the torch and made a bunch of noise, and I was like, oh, it's Pippin.
It's exactly. I don't know if this is Dave being such a Lord of the Rings fan passing it down to Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao and the team on this show, or if there just are a lot of Lord of the Rings fans over there.
There have been a lot of Lord of the Rings references.
So many. I mean, obviously Rex as Strider is the big one, where his entire introduction is shot for shot Viggo Mortensen and the Prancing Pony. But yeah, I mean, and then someone else pointed out that the Alex, what's the name of the creature outside of Moria? The
Watcher,
like, the Watcher is sort of how they treated the Dianoga in that episode
there's
too.
Something in the water.
Yeah. So it definitely has so many shades of that show throughout, and even the way that you hear all of the action beneath the shadows is sort of like hearing the goblins, before you actually see them and stuff. So,
yeah. I was waiting for someone to call him a fool of a toque. Although when we were watching it, I went, "Oh, it's Pippin," and Molly was like, "What?" And like looked around for our cat because
I was like, "What did he do now?"
Yeah,
I mean that happens with me and my dog Mando. He's sitting over here asleep because his name is Mando. Now I just feel like I'm grief whenever I call him Mando. It's time for a walk.
Love it. Olivia Perano, thanks for the super chat. This episode was just fine in my opinion, but it would make a great ride at Galaxy's Edge. Also, do Deveronian horns grow back like Zabrak horns do? It would make a great ride. Also, Alex, you reminded me earlier that it was very much like Temple of Doom.
Oh, yeah. That was the first thing I thought of. Just a good old minecart chase. Let's see. I remember laughing at the fact that like they actually had to crank it like an old-timey railroad car.
Alex was giggling because they worked the same as how they work here.
All this technology. but it made sense later because they were just trying to be quiet. Later on, she was like, hit the engines. And I was like, oh, they can do that. I just thought it was like one of those funny old, like, all right, let's crank this thing and down the tracks we go. It also reminded me of The Rock. Apparently underneath Alcatraz, according to this movie.
Oh, the Michael
like
Bay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Right. It's like there's like a mine under there, but it's suspended from like a top track, just like what we saw today. And I was like, what a weird thing to take inspiration from.
On the subject of it being a ride, that's a great comment because there are not one but two popular mine rides already, where there's Dwarf Minecart of Snow White at Magic Kingdom, and then there's also the Harry Potter Escape from Gringotts, which is another minecart thing. And they're both super popular, and I've never been on either of them because the lines are too long.
There was one at Six Flags too, I think, the one near us, but I don't know if it's still there. I'm aging myself.
Yeah, that one's scary. That one, you go into the dark and you're like, I'm about to lose my head.
Yeah.
It just feels too rickety.
Yeah, I feel like the next time I'm on a ride that my body will be so much weaker after the quarantine year and a half that I just won't be able to take it.
I haven't been beat up by a roller coaster in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That'd be a great Galaxy's Edge ride.
Oh, and then we established that we don't think that they grow back. But
yeah, I would assume so, but who knows? 56 Landon, thanks for the question. Who's to say that this show is in chronological order? That assumption has been made, but if it's like the Clone Wars, then maybe it's all over the place. That's fair, but I think it's so far been just chronological.
Yeah, so far I think so. Because there are too many that couldn't be shuffled. Ryloth can't be shuffled. The pilot in episode 2 can't be shuffled. Both Cad Bane episodes can't be shuffled. So there's enough to lock it where I'm pretty sure that there's no moving around. But granted, a couple of these Sid episodes are sort of standalone enough.
Yeah,
it does. This one does feel like it could go almost anywhere, as long as it's after the one where they meet her with Moochie, and it's just like, yeah, she keeps on not giving us the full story, and that's a little annoying. I do wonder how they pick where these episodes go, and I'm sure some of it's probably about just pacing and balance, because this episode could have gone almost anywhere. And maybe after the Ryloth arc, which was very fast-paced and intense, they were like, let's slow it down a little bit. And then the last 3 are going to be just our mad dash to the finish. Or I don't know. Maybe it's just the last 2. Or maybe the next one's another standalone. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. And that's the thing, is that Disney Plus does a really good job of keeping you in the dark. Unless an international version of Disney Plus gets something out there, you usually don't know the episode length. You don't know the titles. You don't see the thumbnail. They're very cagey, which is nice, because then if they had, if they put out the finale length and it's not a long enough length in some people's minds, then you'll have people freaking out before it's even out. So
yeah,
I'm kind of expecting that they're just going to be 25-ish minute episodes for the rest of the series. Maybe season 2, which I guess we could talk about that potential, will kick off with a longer episode.
Long one.
Yeah, because Star Wars Rebels did that.
Mm-hmm.
Season 1 kicked off with a movie. Season 2 did as well. But I'm looking at the time right now for every episode, and they're all, except for the second episode, under 30 minutes. So I think they're probably going to stick with that.
Yeah. Speaking of season 2, I was going to go to Guiguio's super chat. Vizago was running the Broken Horn Syndicate in Rebels. Do you think Roland could have a hand in its creation as we go forward with Bad Batch season 2?
I like that.
I do too.
Yeah, I it falls into the, why does everything need to be a cameo that ties in? I get it. I hear you. It just doesn't bother me as much. And I feel like Vizago is small enough that
Vizago to me is not oh my god, it's Vizago.
Yeah,
to be honest, I don't even remember that character from Rebels. We really need to do our Rebels rewatch soon, but yeah, I wouldn't.
A decent amount of episodes, but he looks like Roland with a broken horn.
He's just got some facial hair,
yeah.
And he's
he's big buff.
He's pretty handsome, honestly, Molly.
Yeah.
He's pretty handsome.
He's a good looking dude.
I said in our reaction that I thought Roland was hot for a Devronian.
You did say that.
Roland is. I tweeted that today. Is it Tom Taylorson that voiced him? I believe. I responded to him. I was like, "This is a great performance. Loved the character, and honestly, super handsome for for a Star Wars scumbag." I actually thought it was Witwer at first, and with the way the intonation of his voice, I was like, "Is this another Sam character?" Because I keep expecting him, because we know he got to see some of it early, but.
I'm waiting for him to pop up in the cast list just so I can be like, liar, because he told us he wasn't in season 1.
Okay, all right. I think I do remember that. So it was Ian McDermott just reused dialogue in the pilot for Palpatine.
I assumed so, but
Yeah,
I
okay,
don't know.
that makes sense. Yeah, he didn't say anything. He didn't say.
Yeah.
Revenge.
I
Yeah.
do know that Ian McDiarmid played Palpatine in the opening. I don't know if they just repurposed it or re-recorded or what.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Darth Maul to be like, Crimson Dawn is here, and I'll be like, I knew it.
Oh, I totally thought I'm so glad you said that, because I totally thought that Dryden was going to show up.
Me too.
Because of the Pikes, because they're not going to animate that asset and then never
Thank
use
you,
it again.
Alden. Thank you.
That's exactly, because ever since Caleb showed up, I'm like, okay, what's every asset that they have that they haven't used?
I've been saying that since the show started. I'm waiting.
This
and I was
was the one that you were like, oh, it could be this one. But then I think you saw the thumbnail and was like,
I was like, I don't know. But yeah, but they're not going to spoil Dryden in the thumbnail.
No.
Who knows who this Deveronian works for?
They could have just
True.
pulled Paul Bettany aside on the set of WandaVision and said, can you read these?
Okay,
thanks.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
But let's talk about. Oh, never mind, because the next question is perfect for this. Good 2 questions right in an order. Dragonus Prime, thanks for your super chat. It's your boy. Can't stay long, but I'm just popping in to say that I fully expect that we will get a season 2 tease like Loki had. I agree.
Yeah.
I think I don't know why. Maybe just to build up hype and like have that announcement at the end, but because we had heard about Loki season 2 potentially being in development, but I was surprised they didn't announce it early on.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get that at the very end, now I'm like, okay, I think they're going to do something similar with the Bad Batch, even if it's not in the show itself, to be like,
right,
the Bad Batch will return in season 2. They'll make the announcement in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, however many more weeks we have. But
I wonder if that's like a Disney Plus decision. If that, like, if you're watching the last episode of a show, not knowing that there's another season, but then it drops right there at the end, if that gets people super hyped more so. So that might just be like a Disney Plus thing.
Well, they did something like that for Game of Thrones as well. I feel like it was at the end of season 1. They immediately were like, yeah, we renewed this, don't worry. So yeah, I think they'll probably, I feel like they have to have a second season.
I think they have to. I mean,
there's going
again, the crosshair of it all, because he hasn't been in as many as a lot of people think he should be, as the other member, as one of the chief villains now. The Winter Soldier crosshair, essentially, he has to be turned back. They need to have a fight. He needs to die. He needs to go away. Like, whatever they decide to do, can it be done in a few more? Totally. I mean, you saw the Siege of Mandalore. You could do a lot in that amount of time. But you definitely think that there's going to be more, especially if there was no Omega and it was just dudes being dudes and one of our bros is on the bad side. You could probably wrap it. But with Omega, especially with this, you are effectively Boba's sister, closest thing he has. I think that you have to open it up to more. And I think that, Molly, you brought up a great point with Disney Plus. It's the whole idea of staying in the news cycle. Yeah. Especially in a vicious streaming climate that there is now. I mean, we saw today they had to go up against Ted Lasso, and not that that's necessarily the same demographic, but you're competing for trends. You're competing for space on publications and YouTube channels. So, of course, if they had announced Bad Batch Season 2, everybody that makes content would be putting in their Season 2 predictions into their Season 1 stuff. But by doing it this way, they get to force Alex to record a what do I expect in Season 2 video. Yeah, that helps.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because I will probably do that. What's up, Charlie? Charlie thinks that it'll just be Boba Fett sitting on yet another seat dramatically. That'll be our tease for Season 2.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, sitting on like a different throne.
But it's gonky sideways.
No. Don't push him over. He's a treasure. I also just want to point, I because we haven't mentioned it yet, but this Wrecker screaming at the bugs got a very loud laugh out of me.
He's funny.
I love Wrecker. I will die defending him.
Yeah, Wrecker has not that I ever disliked him, but you write him off in Clone Wars season 7 as just being a sort of a meathead.
Not me.
Yeah, he's grown on me. I was a Wrecker OG.
All you fake Wrecker fans out there. I was there from the start.
I came into this show being such a, because I was like a Ninja Turtles kid. I never liked Leo. I never wanted to pick the one that was like leader. I always picked Raph. I didn't like. I always picked like Faith instead of Buffy. I always picked Wesley instead of Angel. I was never a Luke kid.
Wesley Wyndham Price is
Wesley
treasure.
Wyndham Price investigations. I've always gone to the side. That said, and I came into the show with that same attitude of like Tech's my favorite. And I still love Tech. But man, have they sold me on Hunter.
Ooh, yeah. I still think in some ways Tech is my favorite. Just because I like how just like random he is. Like when they were like headed into the ship at one point in this episode, he starts reading about the bugs that are in that mine thing. Nobody asked him. He's just been looking up those bugs on his little pad, and is like, I'm going to tell everyone about these bugs. And then
pull up Wikipedia real quick.
Yeah, because he's working on that little light bomb thing from Blade.
And he's thank you. I mean, between that and Omega's energy bow, which was straight up Blade Trinity, I was totally on the same path as you. That's so funny.
All about the references today.
Everything is just a reference when you've been locked inside your house for so
right.
long.
I've seen everything. I watched all the Blade movies.
Everything's connected.
It's just straight up Charlie Day. Yeah, but it's super cool that Tech is able to do that in a way that's organic. Because when you think about all other Star Wars, especially the shows, you can have characters that know a certain amount. Like a Grief Karga can tell you certain things. Or in Star Wars Resistance, Yeager and Niku. Like characters have expertise. This is a show with a built-in way to make sure that everybody watching is completely up to speed at all times, no matter what, because that is Tech's mutation. And nobody can even say like, kind of convenient that he knows. That's the point. He's a super genius in a comic book super way. So it tracks.
Yeah, they established it very early on in the show that he just like expects people to know and realize things. And ever since then, he's kind of been like dropping these little information bombs on people. And it's totally normal for him. Yeah.
And it's normal for the team too, because they're have an only work lifestyle. So that's what he would be doing anyway, even if there was no Order 66. They would be on the next mission and he would still be doing it. So it never feels like he's interrupting, and it never feels like the actual scripts for the episodes are just stopping.
Got another super chat from 56 Landon. Thank you. Bad Batch uses old characters and people, call the universe small. Bad Batch adds new characters and people, call it filler. Let the show develop. Yeah, it's small universe and filler are just like words that people want to throw out on social media and in reviews and stuff, and they don't really mean anything.
I mean, I would like to admit that I am a full-on hypocrite, because sometimes they bring in a character and I'm like, I don't like that they met this new group of people. And sometimes Bo-Katan drops out of the sky and helps Din from drowning, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So like it's all just
what I always say is fan service as a concept is sort of like, like a political philosophy, like for me and not for thee. It's only fan service if it doesn't land with you emotionally. If it does land with you emotionally, then you can't even compute it that way, which is why I try to back myself up from it, especially in the renaissance of Boba Fett that we're in, the Fettissance.
Right.
Like, he was a character who I am on record trashing. I am on record saying that I don't want him in Mandalorian, and what they've done with him everywhere. I mean, exactly. Like, I'm gonna complain online. See you next week. Like, it really is always that way. And fan service and small galaxy are both those things too. It's only small if it doesn't necessarily work for you. And I resent and hate all small galaxy complaints, because this is the franchise that the creator of said franchise established had its core villain in Vader build one of its core characters
Right.
with 3PO. Once that happens, the galaxy's not small anymore. And then the other partner, R2D2, he was property of Leia's mom. So that immediately tells you, like, this is opera. This is tight knit for a reason. You know, I tweeted it the other day, like, Marvel and DC Comics do this too. Don't read those if you think Star Wars is a small galaxy. It'll frustrate you.
Yeah, it's mythology. It's opera, space opera, whatever you want to call it. Like, you're right. But it's just one of those things where sometimes they do something and I'm like, nope, made it feel small. But
we were kind of on the same page too with Boba Fett. We weren't really trashing him, but we were like, he might take too much away from the rest of the story. We were like, I don't know if we want him to show up. But when he did, we were like, oh, that was good.
It was the same for Luke too. I mean, there's always things where people are like, do you want so-and-so to show up? And like all of season 2, I was like, no, I don't want Luke in this. I love that Mando is set apart. And then he showed up and I was like, oh my God, it's Luke Skywalker. Like my heart was pounding. Like, it's so subjective. It's the same thing with stuff like when people complain about plans or whatever. It's like, you're only complaining about this because you just didn't like whatever the movies did. But people who love the movies or the series or whatever are like, who gives a shit crap about plans?
Yeah, I mean, easy now, easy. No, no, totally. I mean, it brings out that hypocritical nature that we all have, that conflicting. Like, I love the sequel trilogy. I can also acknowledge, and I love all 3 of them, which shocks a lot of people. And I can acknowledge that they weren't as planned as, say, the prequel trilogy. But at the same time, no great improv performance that I've ever seen has been planned. And Star Wars is a yes and act in a lot of ways, as much as it is anything else. I mean, the entire history of Star Wars is filling in these little gaps that make everything else work a lot more. Where, like, I don't know if you saw this going around on that Twitter account, Star Wars Connections, I think it's called, that it is now canon that Avar Chris's master can be seen in The Force Awakens because of that one little statue in Maz's castle, which in a reference book was this name, and that name is Avar's master. So those little things that are not, again, I'm not saying that's on the same level as something like Rey Palpatine, but I am saying that things play in that way of, like, did we mean to do that? No. Is it great? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And you can have both. You can acknowledge that it wasn't as smooth as maybe it could have been, but at the same time, once it exists, it exists. And Marvel's a great example of that, because since we've had it for 12 years already, if not more, we forget the kinks. But look at Thor. Thor 1 destroys the Bifrost Bridge, and then Avengers, it's, how'd you get here? Dark magic. Because they needed him in the movie. and so we've always done this. Let's skirt around things. Let's move things here. Oh, Sharon Carter's back. Oh, she's a villain now. Why? Setting something up. Oh, cool. It won't feel that way when you see it.
I always look at Marvel for when something kind of rubs me the wrong way in Star Wars. I'm like, hold on now. What if they did something like this in Marvel? Would I care? Probably not, because I'm just not as invested in the universe.
Right. And Marvel has trained people to think a certain way that hasn't necessarily carried into, I think, Star Wars fandom a lot, unless it's to make like a bad faith comparison. Like, Marvel only shows up to put Star Wars down, instead of the other way around, which is that Marvel has done a lot of what Star Wars has done. It was just doing it when Star Wars was taking 10 years off. You know, like that first phase is chock full of things just getting blatantly made up. I mean, Iron Man 1, we see Coulson come up with S.H.I.E.L.D. on the spot as a name. And then a few movies later, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s always been there. If that was a Star Wars film that had established an organization that way and then gone back, we'd be hearing about it for the next 3 years. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Dan Ritter, what's up, man? Thanks for 2 super chats. I'll read them in a row here. First of all, Alden's out here killing it with outside of Star Wars references, Dark Knight, Mulan, etc. Second, much like Clone Wars and Rebels, I feel like this filler episode will come back to us later. They always do. I agree.
Yeah. Even if it's just Sid being a little bit closer to them, being like the loyalty between all of them growing a little bit more, even if that's the only thing we get out of this, I think it's worth it if it has an impact later.
I mean, if we see in the next episode or two Sid get like a blaster pointed at her to give up Omega and the Batch, and she doesn't do it, I mean, I think that would be a great moment that would enhance this episode. And it would, like people were saying, that could be an empty threat, all of her blackmail talk. Maybe it is. And I would like to see that proven. Something like that could very easily make me appreciate this episode a lot more.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to reverse engineer your expectations, right? Because we could all see that beat happening. And let's say that beat happens and she makes the right decision and doesn't give them up. But we didn't have that episode. You might hear some criticisms then of, I don't really believe that. Sid's a scoundrel. Like, Sid never showed that she cared. So having these episodes in there allows this to be more believable later on. I mean, Rebels had great episodes that were just about making sure Ezra and Sabine grew up a little bit. And those all paid off later, because by seasons 3 and 4, you fully believe that they could be in charge of missions because of those little adventures.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to rewatch Rebels.
I am about to rewatch Rebels. I am so excited.
We gotta finish Clone Wars.
Which was never going to. We gotta like really fly through it, or else it's just not gonna happen next year.
You might have to reformat them, go live, and then just never stop being live. And just do like a days long marathon. Have pizza delivered. If you want to watch us, watch them. Come along. If not, see you in a few days.
I'm not against that, honestly. If we get pizza, it's a party. Sure. Crixteus, thanks so much for the super chat. What would a great tech-focused storyline / episode look like? This, as soon as I read it, it made me think of when Omega asked Tech about what the war was like, and I was like, oh, here we go. We're about to get like a cool like heart-to-heart, and it was like, no. It's like I just told you.
I mean, it was very Tech. War. Yeah, it was very Tech. Man, that's a good question. I would love to see his superpowers get taken away somehow. Maybe someone steals his little tablet that he's always Googling.
I was gonna say it reminds me of the Youngling arc with the little kid that had the tablet.
Oh yeah.
And he was trying to find his crystal, and he had to like smash his tablet to like pass the test or whatever. He could be put to some kind of test like that.
I mean, it's turn off your targeting computer, but like in the most literal way, like that theme. I've also had a suspicion, and it sort of went away because I thought that Wrecker with all his headaches in the first half of the season was a red herring, and that it would be someone else in the batch that would turn, and I thought it was going to be Tech, because and that could still happen, like in some capacity. Like, yeah, his chip is out, but you never know, being coerced into it, or they could get captured and re-chipped. Like, they could do whatever they want in the show. But I think that at any situation where Tech is the villain would be the most horrific thing because of how much he knows, and because of how much he knows them. Where it's like, with someone like Crosshair, I am afraid of them and Crosshair, but in a 4v1, I'm pretty confident that our team will do fine. But that's why I'm hoping we get something like Crosshair versus Cad Bane, like somebody that might actually be able to outshoot him or something like that. But
yeah,
if Tech's chip went off, that would be like getting Dexter as a serial killer. Like he knows exactly what to do.
You meant Jetster.
Oh.
She did. Dexter Jetster as a serial killer.
Yeah.
Dexter Jetster's a serial killer. We just didn't know it.
Steak knives. Yeah.
Oh, that's a parody poster that should be made.
Where's Brian Ward when you need him?
I know. Drace90 made that Omega's Gambit poster a few weeks ago.
I love that so much.
Yeah, I anything that happens with Tech, I would just want to see him on the back foot. whether he finds something he doesn't know about and can't find out about. He just needs to be challenged. That's all I really care about. How? I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, a lot of this
I trail off
with an emerging empire. I mean, you two would know better than I would just off the top of your heads with trivia brains, but emerging empire tech, like there has to be something new right now during the dawn of the empire that he hasn't seen before. Some kind of ship, some kind of TIE fighter or something that they have that could throw him off of his game to a certain degree that they didn't have in the Republic Army.
Okay.
The BT-16s.
I could, yeah. I was thinking of maybe the way that Thrawn is always baffled by the Force. Maybe we could deal with something there where because I want to see them working with a surviving Jedi, Quinlan Vos, Apparensis, somebody.
Ooh.
But maybe Tech has to be the one for some reason to go in and deal with the Jedi, and it's like it's such a foil of like, no, I'm like tech, knowledge, science, etc. And the Jedi's like, but mysticism and faith and other things, and just seeing them kind of butt heads could be good.
Oh, that's good.
I had a really silly idea. If they ran into a creature like Borgullet, who like feeds on emotions, and he tried to feed on Tech, like he'd either be like, oh god, this is too much, or like, you don't actually have any feeling. It's just all knowledge, and like that would be his way of like saving the day.
Yeah, just being able to shut down
on you.
Yeah.
Some super empathic creature. Oh, I love both of those ideas. I think we should combine them. There should be a Borgullet Jedi of some kind. I know that his name is Borgullet and not his species, but I love that idea, and I also love the flip of if they send one of the Inquisitors after the Bad Batch, and then that immediately changes the game for them in terms of a villain that doesn't have to play by their rules, that can use the dark side of the Force. That could be really exciting. I mean, I thought for sure that in terms of this Force user conversation that Cal Kestis was going to cameo because they animated his ponchos and went on into the junkyards there. But I think that at some point, will it be Ahsoka? Probably. But will it be somebody else? I hope so.
Yeah.
99% it's Ahsoka. No, but I love Quinlan Vos because that reason. It's a great point. Mm-hmm. He's just not your standard Jedi, so seeing not your standard clone work with the Jedi like Quinlan would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Or Gungi, who did not die.
Yeah, Gungi's alive and well. We all agree.
Mm-hmm. I like to think that Gungi is a descendant of Buryaga.
Oh, that's great.
I love it. That's everyone. Speaking of, everyone is trying
not
to figure out
not that all Wookiees are related or anything, but they both give me the same feeling.
Yeah, I just want to hug him. I mean, that's every Wookiee, really.
Yeah.
Except for Chrysanthemum, who I don't want to hug.
Yeah, some of them are really intense.
Everyone's trying to figure out what the title Fallen Star means, because that's the final book in Wave 3 of Phase 1 of the High Republic. And
I feel like
everyone thinks it means something bad, and it surely means something good. If the Rising Storm taught me anything, Fallen Star means a happy thing.
I was immediately
we
like,
should all be fine.
Starlight Beacon is gone.
Nope.
Go blow it up.
Nope. We're all fine.
Yeah, Starlight Beacon, I didn't even think of that. I immediately started to think of, again, like with the show Who Breaks? Like, is this the dark side turn of Elzar Mann? Is this the real brutal one would be turning Stellan or something like that? Like getting
or
somebody.
Avar.
It's a great title because it could mean anything.
Yeah.
It could be, is it a great Jedi that falls? Is it Starlight Beacon? Is it both?
I mean, this could be the story of, might be too soon in her career, but of Keeve Trennis leaving or something like that.
Well, she's got to be a master first.
Oh, that's okay. It was a master. Okay, yeah. Well, then we got some time with her, thankfully, because she's cool.
Technically, it's
Well, according to the audio drama.
I like that Claudia Gray is finding ways to work the word star into all of her books, or a lot of them.
Just two. Lost Stars, Fallen Star.
Yeah, well, her Star Wars work. We'll say that.
Well, yeah, Star Wars is in all the titles, Molly.
That makes sense.
It's just funny how that worked out. That she started working in Star Wars.
Yeah. Iceberg 11327. Thanks so much for the super chat. Really enjoyed this one. Feels like it'll be important later. Now Sid seems fully on their side. Seeing people call it filler, which I don't like, feels like build up before a banger. Your thoughts? Oh yeah,
I think banger.
I think the next couple ones have to be bangers.
Bangers, bops, jams.
I agree, and I'm also, I said the word filler, but I was in my review today, but as in like I've seen people calling this filler, and I'm just like, I hate that term.
Yeah,
because you just don't know until the series is over. And this is like bringing it full circle from the start. Space Whales, Pergil, no one knew that was going to be in the final episode. Part of me wonders if Dave Filoni was like, "Oh, you think that was filler? I'll write you filler," and just like,
especially on an animated show, when I hear people call anything filler, I'm like, do you know how many people have worked on this show, poured their blood, sweat, and tears into making this whole show work, and like, you think that they were just like, oh yeah, let's just put this in here as a filler, and whatever, like the next couple ones will be good, but this one's just a throwaway. Like, I feel like that's an insult to everyone who worked on this show.
It is an insult, frankly, and I'm glad you said it. Not that we're all trying to like crack our knuckles on this one, but I really do think that it is kind of insulting, especially just given the track records of the people involved. Not that everyone's perfect, and I'm not like worshiping at the altar of Filoni, but I do. But there's, you look at Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, which I think is pretty much universally agreed upon as one of the lesser Mandalorian episodes for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. That was a Dave script as well as Dave directing, and what you get there is this introduction of Fennec, and then she's gone, and it's they wasted Ming-Na. Little did we know she was already being animated for this show, and before season 1 of Mando. And so it's like, this is the guy that plays the long game, even though he's not super hands-on with this show. Obviously, he's a busy guy. This is still a show that he created. These are still people working in his department, and they all sort of go to that George school of things coming back. And I think that, I think that it's always a knee-jerk reaction to say filler when I didn't get the answers that I wanted, is the way that it feels.
I don't. Yes. I want to know more about this Naruto.
Oh, I mean, okay, so I don't know Naruto, but I mean, Dragon Ball Z, come on. Like,
Dragon Ball Z.
I loved Dragon Ball Z growing up, and to watch Goku freaking power up for 12 episodes before finally turning Super Saiyan was, oh my God. Like,
I mean, it would be like Goku would literally start a Kamehameha wave, episode would end. Then the next episode, they would cut to someone else's perspective while he backed it up. So it's constantly doing this cycle in pop culture, and we've gotten better. Like, filler used to be way worse. I mean, 22 network television, that we've gotten away from that for the most part, except for This Is Us, which I love. You end up with a lot of that stuff, and so I'm grateful always that we get as little filler as we want to get. But even then, like, if these last few episodes aren't bangers and it's just one final banger, I'll still accept that, because look at Mandalorian Chapter 6. I mean, that was when we were all at peak, like, come on, like, what's going on? Like, we had the Cara Dune, then Toro Calican, now a bunch of other newbies, like, what's going on here? And then boom, in 2 episodes they were able to take it up to totally new heights.
I mean, that's another, but Chapter 6 was one that I was like on, but it introduced Mayfeld, who then like I freaking loved in chapter 15. So like we could be seeing something like that with Roland down the line, where I was like, didn't love the introduction, but glad it happened so that we could get this later. I will say though that clip shows are garbage and they shouldn't happen.
Oh yeah, we're rewatching through Friends right now. We've seen a couple of those, but you know, if you love the show enough, I like a good clip show because I'm like, oh, remember when in season 2 they all look different? And
oh yeah,
clip shows are acceptable for series finales. That's when I accept them. The Boy Meets World series finale, it's great. It's a clip show. Let's look back.
That's a wonderful series finale. I cry whenever Feeney is, giving them the ending speech. It's awesome. And I also think of reused bits, like people again to make it relevant to Bad Batch. People are probably like, what are you talking about? 90s sitcoms now. I will make it relevant.
This has been an episode we're just everywhere.
Well, it's like I've seen people say like, oh, is the Bad Batch learning the same lesson? Because Omega is constantly being a better human being than them because she's a child that has all this wonder. And it's like, yes, but one of my favorite sitcoms is How I Met Your Mother. And they reuse the same bits. It feels like hundreds of times with things like the slap bet. But every time that it gets presented to you, it's the same thing, but the characters are at a different point in their lives. Like the Hunter from, the first episode is not the same as the Hunter that talked to Cut and Sue, that he gained a little bit more parental perspective. And then meeting Trace and Rafa, and Rex, it's now I have this parenting perspective, but also this perspective that everything I do kind of does matter. And now he's starting to, I think, really appreciate Omega as his sister, daughter. It's getting really Southern in here, but yeah, it's like, her being like, I'm good at strategy. I'm good at this. That sort of was his sort of like, oh, you have your own interests and value, and like you're growing up before our eyes. So he's changing, even if it's the same on paper sort of thing.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because it's funny. And then I wanted to tell Michelangelo to read the Book of New Dawn. That's where we see Hera and Kanan meet. And then I'll jump to Aimless Dreamer. Thanks for a very generous super chat. I really appreciate how you guys approach the series. It feels like there's so little regard for long form storytelling outside of Marvel. Don't get me wrong, I love Marvel, but Star Wars shows are just as good at it. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, this is my own perception too, is that I want everything to be like this big deal, like every episode, but they can't all be.
Yeah,
it needs to be a roller coaster, highs and lows, where sometimes things are fast and sometimes they're a little bit slower.
Yeah. And then like once the season is over, you can look back and really appreciate the highs and the lows. Yeah. Now, like after you get the full story.
And they're also fundamentally built different, even if they're doing the same thing. Like we all podcast and make stuff, but none of us are doing it the same. But I like so many things in the community. You approach big content like this in the same way. Not that I want to reduce the art to content, but you have sort of like a lot of this conversation of Marvel and especially the sequel trilogy because they were the movies. But they're not built the same way on purpose. If we were really going to have a 1-to-1, there would have been a Rey movie, a Finn movie, a Poe movie, a Han and Leia movie, and then they would have come together in The Force Awakens. That's what Marvel did. And that's what we train society to do. So then they look at Star Wars and they feel like, well, that's not my thing because Marvel got big when Star Wars was gone. So to compare them now just because they're both huge is, as to me, useless as comparing Wars and Trek, as comparing Marvel and DC. Like they're not all inherently the same, and they don't have to be. You can like things that are different kinds of things. There are people that will watch something like The Bad Batch and then they'll also watch something like The Bachelor, and like I've never really watched reality TV, but I get that it's a completely different kind of engagement and people get really attached to those shows. So
yeah. Alex, are we watching The Bachelor after this?
I wasn't planning on it. Are we?
No.
That's up to you.
I've never watched an episode.
Whatever
in my
the
life,
wife wants to watch.
but I'm sure it's great. I know Jake
the wife.
with his
I
girlfriend.
mean, I made Molly watch a bunch of
not
episodes
to
of
put him-
Guru and Log On, so
Well,
I loved it.
I turned on an episode of My Unorthodox Life the other
Mhm.
night just because I was curious, and I was like, Alex would hate this, so I'm going to turn it
I sat
off.
there and I built my Lego set. And I let
It
you
was
watch the thing.
interesting.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes
You
get
turned it off. You turned it off and said that you didn't want to watch it anymore.
Yeah,
I was
'cause-
fine.
I wasn't going to put you through that.
But sometimes you think that might not necessarily be their jam, but then like I didn't choose to watch Bridgerton. You know, well I did choose, but I didn't anticipate.
I didn't choose this life.
I didn't anticipate watching Bridgerton. But once I was sat down to watch it, I was like, I love these characters. I love this show. Like, I think that everybody can be surprised by something.
Okay, I've seen too many great jokes about the Bad Bachelor or who on the Batch would you go for?
Hunter. Hunter. What kind of question is that? He's got the best hair.
I mean,
Eternally sensitive.
yeah. Wait, can Hauser be in this?
Oh yeah, Hauser is just
Well, then everyone would pick House. He would get all the
Right.
roses.
Fine. No Hauser.
yeah. I mean, I legitimately I've talked about this with Nikki from the Imperial Senate podcast of just like breaking it down. Like Tech clearly emotionally unavailable. Wrecker, like you'll have fun, but like will you have more than fun? You know, Hunter's just got the whole package. Although I see strong arguments for Echo, having been through a lot.
I was gonna say Echo just because like I want to know how he's doing. I need to have a conversation with him. Be like, are you okay?
Yeah. Same. I feel like there's a lot that you could unpack with him that
I'm enjoying. Callus, if he were in the show, if only.
Hot Callus, man. A moment in time. Once he parted the hair, it was
Everyone
crazy.
watching Rebels was like, hang on now.
he
It's
gets.
like
he
the
gets the
it's like
little
when she's all that
piece
when
of
she
hair
takes
that
the
comes
glasses
down.
off.
The
Like,
one
you've
piece of
been
hair.
hot
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole time.
Yep.
It's when you're like, oh, he's letting loose now. He's really getting it now. Oh,
With
God.
that drilled.
Does that
No.
take other attachments?
What a
honestly,
curse.
I thought that that's what you guys were talking about when you brought up Echo, and I was gonna keep quiet. I was gonna be like, yeah, attachments. No.
Oh,
Frosty
yeah.
Weeks will do it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he's been through a lot. Been through a lot, I'll tell you that. You know, he's probably got that whole like people with issues are spicier thing going on. But that's the Bad Bachelor, which honestly should just be the I expect a new graphics package for your next episode. I want roses.
Oh man.
I want everything.
I mean, Molly was the clone zone was Molly's name idea. She threw it out as a joke, and I said, "I love it. We're keeping it." And then now I'm like, the Bad Bachelor. Is it too late to change?
We have to rate every episode with how many roses we give it.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, like start sending people home and
That could be a TikTok. We could do it.
a TikTok.
Yeah,
Content
do
creation
little
is happening here.
30-second little interludes. My goodness. Okay, we should wrap up because it's been almost an hour and a half, and we've got Molly and I have to get ready to do something else soon. But that was a super fun talk, Alden. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mando, for being quiet. He's looking at me like you better walk me soon. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff with you guys. It's always a good time, and you know, well, you're part of my morning routine. Like I've told you before, I'm always. I mean, that's the beauty of the daily Damon's video. But yeah, it's been great.
Great. Where can people find you online and follow you?
Yeah, so you could follow me. It's right here. It's AD_Strider on Twitter, on Instagram, A.D.Strider. And then Ahch-To Radio is my Star Wars podcast. It's where I interview people in the Star Wars community, whether that's the fan community, the actual Lucasfilm community. Alex and Molly have been on individually. They've been on together. We've had everyone from like Christina Ariel, on the show. Naomi Aki was on the show before Rise of Skywalker, which was a lot of fun. And then it's also home to The Mandatorian Creed, which is Tori Fox's show, where she does multi-part breakdowns of different Star Wars topics. And then I don't have the graphic in for this one yet, so it hasn't actually started, but a rewatch Between Worlds is me and Nikki Kumar, and we're going to do Rebels from start to finish, include the Rebels recons. So you can look forward to that soon.
Nice. That's awesome.
Well, links to most of that is in the description. I will add the rest of it.
Yeah, whatever's there. You find me, you hit me up. There's a bunch of stuff going on. One and Done Film Club, forgot to plug that. But yeah, find me on Twitter, probably tweeting some thread. I do that. So
you do that, and they're good threads.
Oh, thank you.
And you were just as insightful here. I was honestly like, when this episode ended, and I was like, I wasn't crazy about that. I was like, I'm glad Alden's on, because I bet he'll.
I appreciate that. Well, what's funny is that the last time that the three of us did an episode was for when I reviewed for Ahch-To Radio the Frog Lady episode, the first Frog Lady episode, The Passenger. And I remember sort of having a similar feeling. And by the end of that, we had kicked it around enough where, this is like after school, clubs. It's like we're all sort of working it out in our heads. So that's why I don't ever review things on the day they come out, which is my prerogative. And I understand that a lot of people have to get them out and stuff. But that's why Letterboxd lets you change your star rating over time, because you will always have a different opinion.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Real quick, just because I like this and we should do it more often. Predictions on next week's ep, which is called Project War Mantle.
Okay. I don't know if they're going to do it, because I guess they kind of did it in Rebels, but I would love to see an Empire. And I'm saying this right after saying, like, there wasn't enough of the Bad Batch in this. Like, I would love to see a mostly Empire story. Like, I want to see a bunch of Crosshair, like just all the Empire stuff that's going on. I think we could get a good look at all of that stuff. But yeah. I mean, that's what I would like to see.
My hypocrite coming out again. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Where that episode, the first Ryloth episode, where I was like, I don't know, I missed Wrecker, which I would still miss Wrecker, but having a lot of Crosshair and really diving into what's going on with the Empire and Camino, and like having that be a setup for a final 2-episode like big old conflict.
I want to see plans for TIE fighters and like just different like Empire related stuff that could, like, little Easter eggs.
Right. Yeah. Oh, plans. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just Project War Mantle. I was like, that's probably. I mean, that's what they've said is phasing out clones, getting in stormtroopers, but it could be everything.
Especially because we haven't seen
TIE fighters.
Yeah, we haven't seen Tarkin, and we only saw Rampart a little bit. Having a Rampart as the eyes in character. I mean, we saw that with Callus and Rebels when he was already turning, but just doing an episode that's like, I'm a bad man would be so good. I mean, the man has an action figure. He got a 6-inch Black Series before a lot of characters that I would say probably deserve one a little more. And so it's like, sell me on this guy and show me that he's terrible. And yeah, the Kaminoans was a great point too. Show me Lama Su, because this show has shown me that Lama Su is a dirty, dirty dog, and I hate him.
Yeah, I love everything they've been doing with the Kaminoans.
Yeah, for sure. Rest in peace, Tonwi.
All right, we're putting all of our hopes and dreams on Molly's predictions, because that sounds great. And the title is appropriate, but we'll see you next week for the Frog Lady origin story. When none of this happens. All right, that's going to do it for us today and for the Clone Zone. We will be back live streaming on Wednesday to start up the Cantina. We're finally going to start the Cantina. We got that 7 months ago.
Oh my gosh.
Lord. And we'll be doing that on Wednesday. We'll be back with Rick Villanueva as our guest on Clone Zone next week. Hey, Rick. Yeah, to talk about Project War Mantle. So thank you all so much for watching and discussing this episode, and may the Force be with you.